Hey, this is Elizabeth Off Grid, and today we're going to talk about all of my debt. Okay, I'm actually going to go into the actual numbers of how much debt I am in, and this is relevant because number one of the reasons I live in a vehicle is because of all this debt and how I want to pay it off, and really just to make it easier on me to just carry this load and do the monthly payments. But another reason I'm sharing this is because there's a lot of people who are in debt, and I think there's a lot of shame and guilt about debt. It's kind of this unspeakable thing for people to talk about. And then there's also a lot of people who share stories. It's when they've already paid off the debt. Sometimes because someone helped them. They lived at their parents' house, or they got an inheritance, or, there's some reason they were able to pay it off. Or it's just after, they took however many years to work really hard, to live in a vehicle, to do whatever they needed to do, to work 3 jobs and pay off this debt. And you're seeing the video of them after. I think it is more interesting to see the mess along the way and the struggle that someone has along the way, as opposed to just seeing it when it's all done. All right, so let's get into it. So I have a spreadsheet where I track all of my debt, and I put in there every month what my total debt is, like both for every single account that I have, as well as my overall debt, so I can track where I'm at. I think this is a great idea to stay on top of things. There's a real common problem that people have when they have a lot of debt, or any problem in life, is they just don't want to face it. They don't want to face the reality. And so one great way to deal with these kind of problems or challenges in your life is to just deal with the reality, to look at the numbers every single month or week or day, or what, it depends on what it is, right? And then you are not, you can only solve a problem if you have information about the problem, if you know what the challenge actually is. That's when you can strategize solutions for things. So let's start at the beginning. I have no credit card debt. I have had credit card debt over the years, but I have converted any credit card debt that I've had over the last couple of years to being flat rate interest rate loans. So I'm not in a place of just doing minimum payments where you literally never pay it off. Every debt account that I have will be paid off at a certain date, and I know what that date is. So that is a much better situation than it being in a bunch of credit card debt. So let's go into the actual numbers. So at 0 amounts on any credit cards, which is great. And this is all as of December 1st, 2023. Then I have $100,000 in various flat rate loans. And I have these grouped in 2 different packages, kind of, which are about the same amount of payments. And the reason is because the first section, one of which I already paid off, these will all be paid off in the next 2 years by me just making the payments. So I'm not going to try to pay them off earlier. They don't have high interest rate. The highest one I already paid in that category. The next one is 6%. And then I have a couple, the ones that are actually 0. So we're not even going to care about paying those off early. Then I have a section that has all kinds of, that's actually a much more larger amount of money, that are things that won't be paid off for another, 5-7 years, something like that. And this is almost the same payment every month. Now, and then this is all my unsecured debt. Okay. I also have a mortgage on a house that's about the same amount of money. So my total debt, including the mortgage, is $248,000, $221.02. So almost $250,000. Let's just round it, $250,000. So that's a lot of money. And I get people who talk to me and say, leave a comment on a YouTube channel, video, and say, why don't you just, if that was me, I would declare bankruptcy. Why aren't you declaring bankruptcy? Okay. So here's the thing. I own a house that's a rental. By the way, the backstory on that is I've never lived in it. It's a house that I bought for a family member to live in, and they were going to do a rent to own kind of thing. And that was the plan. Then they moved out. So I rented it to strangers. And it is a house that's over 150 years old. It actually tends to require a lot of work, which we're going to talk about a little bit, which is one of my other debts is because of that. But yes, I could sell that house. It would probably sell for about $250,000. So I could pay off all my debt if I did that. And then where would I be? I'd be just at 0. I wouldn't own a house. Part of my retirement plan is the fact that when I'm about 70, that mortgage will be paid off and I will outright own that house. So I either can just take that rent and just have that be part of my retirement income, or I can sell that house and buy a duplex and live in half of it, or sell it and buy something for me to live in just outright. I mean, a lot of different things I can do. It will give me a lot of options when I'm about 70. And I think that is a good plan to have. Also, owning a house and having a mortgage means I look good on paper. I look normal on paper. I can have a really good credit rating because I have a mortgage. If you don't have a mortgage, it is very hard to have a good credit rating. Having a credit rating isn't about being financially responsible. It's not about, paying off all your debts. It's actually about having debt. And the reason is because the people who are, in charge of these credit ratings, they don't care about you being financially responsible and having a high net worth or any of that. They care about, do you make your payments? That's what they care about. And so they want a history of, yes, you are able to make payments. In a way, it's about are you good at handling debt? And having a good credit rating is a wonderful asset to have. Now, can you lead a life without it? Sure. You can do everything cash. You can never have any debt. And there are tons of people who are out there who advocate for that. And yes, when you're paying interest, you could say that's money that goes nowhere or whatever. It's a waste or something like that. Also, it's a way to make life work. And from a practical perspective, that is one of the ways I've made life work. And we're going to talk about that more in a second because I want to talk about where these different debts came from. So looking at these debts, some of these are student loans. Okay. This. So this is 20. So almost $30,000 left of student loans. I have 3 degrees. So that's what that stuff is. And those interest rates are, 6%, 3%. I'm not going to bother paying off 3% early, right? Then I have this loan, this 16 grand. This is because I had to put a new roof on my rental house. And it's a house that is 2 stories and has like a steep thing. I don't know. It was bizarrely expensive. And what happened was it was last year, 2022, at the height of the most expensive part. I think it was 2022, the height of the most expensive part of construction. So yeah, it was insanely expensive. It was like 20 grand, or it was like 19 something and change. And that's how it was. Sometimes you have to put a new roof on a house, and sometimes it's the top of the market and you just gonna get screwed on the price. And that's what happened. So I had to do that. That's just what happened. Then I have these 2 loans, these 2 large loans, and that was paying off credit cards. And the reason those credit cards happened was because of COVID. So when COVID happened in 2020, my business, which is a law firm, that's where I make most of my money, tanked. I lost 80% of my revenue for a very, very long time. What I did for my law firm was I helped people with trademarks, setting up LLCs and corporations, contracts, all that kind of business stuff for very small businesses. And small businesses felt the hit of COVID very, very hard. I actually was seeing it in January of 2020 because I have clients, or I at the time had clients, who sourced products for their business in China, and China was shutting down already. So I was already feeling it in January. It was coming, and I knew it was coming. And I actually did do some things. I did lower my expenses and things like that, canceled things, to the extent that I could, but so did everybody else, right? And then as February and March hit, I had so many clients literally go bankrupt. I had to refund money that people had paid me up front for work that they didn't need me to do because they weren't doing the things anymore. And then I had a whole bunch of stuff just not happen. So yeah, I lost 80% of my revenue effectively overnight. And I got PPP money and all those different things, but they did not cover it. I had an employee at the time. Besides myself, I'm also an employee. And so we had times where I could pay us both. And then the rest of the time I just couldn't, the amount of money I was making was enough to pay for like my overhead. Like I have malpractice insurance and things that I'm required to do. And that was pretty much all it was doing. So I had many weeks, many months where I paid myself nothing. And how I financed life was via debt. And it was just to try to keep things afloat until things turned around. Now, it's not that I didn't try to turn things around. I did. And I actually did turn things around. That is when I started focusing on my YouTube channel for my legal stuff. And it took about a year for it to, really build up a following. But then not only did the channel get monetized and I'm making a couple grand a month just via ads, not consistently, but a lot of months. But also that is where I get all my clients now. I'm making more money now on my law firm than I actually did right before everything tanked. But it took a really long time for it to get back there. There's also a little bit of debt here that is also some other, like this is also tuition. So like a whole big chunk of this is from school stuff. So, looking at all this, we have roof on a rental property, which is really a business debt, but it was cheaper for me to get it personally. I have a whole bunch of student loans and tuition and things like that. And then I have COVID, There's also a little bit of this, I can't remember which one thing it is. Like, this $900 is actually the batteries. It's 0% financing. It's like one of those things where you get 0% financing for 6 months or 12 months or whatever it was. And then this is actually paying the note on my land that I own. How am I going? What is the plan for paying off all this debt, right? Because that is definitely one of the reasons I live in the car. So I don't have rent. So I free up all that money so I can pay this off. Now, the first thing is you want to make sure you can just make the payments. One of these, actually, I haven't had to do any payments for. The first payment starts in January. So right now it says that my monthly payment is $2,200. It's going to go up to $2,700. But so $2,700 is for me to pay all my unsecured debt, just the monthly payment. That's before I eat food. That's before I pay that mortgage. That's before I do anything else. Now, the mortgage, I don't plan to pay this off early. As I talked about, it's part of my strategy for having a good credit rating and my strategy for looking normal on paper and my strategy for retirement. This $1,000 is paid for by the rent on the property. It is a 5-bedroom house that is being rented to a family of 10 who have foster children. So they pay me rent, and then I pay for this. I pay for the management company because this is in a different state, so they get 10% of the rent. I pay for, what else would I have to pay for? I have to pay for water, and then I pay for, insurance, all that stuff. And then I'm effectively paying on this note. So right now, I'm really just breaking even on that house because I have this note to pay off. Otherwise, then I would be ahead by around $300 to $400 a month. But of course, that's really having to pay for that note right now, which will be paid off in 2028. But it's one of my highest interest rates loans, so I do plan to pay that off early. So besides that, then I'm going to have this $2,700 a month starting in January of 2024. Then the extra money that for each month, and how much that will be, I don't know, because I own my own businesses, so my income fluctuates wildly every month. But the extra money will go to pay off the highest interest rate first. So it'll go off to pay off this one that is $24,000, and I will just start putting extra money into that until that one's paid off, etc. Right? Now, there's different theories of paying off debt. Some people like the kind of snowball method where you pay off the smallest debt first, like literally the smallest amount of money first, and then apply that to the bigger and bigger loans until you just have one left. Some people say start with the highest interest rate one. I mean, and from a purely financial perspective, the highest interest rate one you should start with. But the idea of paying off the smaller debt is kind of a psychological thing, so you feel like you've accomplished stuff. I really don't need that at this point in my life. I know what I'm accomplishing. I have a spreadsheet. I'm good. I don't need to calculate it that way. So I'm planning to pay off the highest interest rate one. And the thing is, 10.74% is not that high right now. Like, I can't believe I got that. This is a loan from November because that was what I paid off the rest of my credit cards with. I don't know how I got a 10% interest rate loan. That's what I'm planning to do. And I'm hoping to put in an extra $1,000 or more every month. But it really depends on how my business does or business is. So I have my law firm that does a traditional law practice where I do file trademarks for people and they pay a flat fee. Then I have a Patreon as part of that law channel where I'm actually doing legal stuff for people, like advice, giving legal advice to people. And then that makes some money. Then the ads on that channel sometimes make money. Sometimes we make thousands of dollars in a month, and sometimes we make nothing. That's a whole topic for another video. So I don't really plan on that. However, that's what I'm looking at as my paying off debt money. So before I sink more money into paying off debt, I'm actually saving up the down payment for my next vehicle. And I'm also saving up a emergency fund, because that was one of the things that happened in the pandemic. I had an emergency fund for my business. I had an emergency fund personally. They were wiped out. That was the first thing I did before I started using debt to finance life. So I want to get those emergency funds backed up. So I think I have everything I need for my business set up, and I'm part way on I almost have the whole down payment set up for the next car, and I have a part way for the emergency fund, but those I want to do first. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of the extra money into paying off the debt. My plan, my hope, is to buy my next vehicle in about a year. I plan to buy a Subaru Outback, and just to really have a car that's a little bit bigger, a little bit more usable space, being able to put stuff on a roof rack, being able to put stuff on a tow hitch, having something that is higher clearance, having something that's all-wheel drive. I think it will very much improve the quality of my life. But I want to get some of these debts paid off to free up money to be able to afford that. But it all really depends. It all really depends on how much income I make. And that is something that I can't really plan. I can hope and do all kinds of stuff for. But how much money I will make in a particular month in my businesses is something that fluctuates a lot every single month. Now, January typically is a really good month for legal stuff. It's a good month for my law channel. It's usually a good month for my legal stuff. So we'll see how that goes. It may or may not be. You can't for sure predict it. I feel like we're in a very volatile place from an economic perspective and a business perspective, and things have become much less predictable. So I plan to do videos like this every so often, not like every month, but every so often kind of update on paying off debt and how are things going. So as I said, right now, we're at about a little less than $250,000 of overall debt, but the unsecured debt, that's the debt I'm actually trying to pay off, like in the relatively short term, is 120 grand. How long, what is my goal for how long it will take? Between 2 and 7 years. I would say that's the range, because it all depends on how much money I make. And also what my health is. Am I able to do work really hard? Do I total my car and have to get a new one right away? I mean, there's just unknowable things, right? But that is, if my businesses all do amazingly, I could get it paid off in 2 or 3 years. But if things are just kind of plugging along, then it'll be more like 5 to 7 years. Again, this is Elizabeth Off Grid. If you want to leave a comment below just saying hi or sharing your story about paying off debt or the debt you hope to pay off or what your situation is, feel free to do so. Otherwise, like, subscribe, all the things. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.